the sunnah is a way of being. And this is what these sessions are really ultimately about. You know, it's called the soul's compass, which once again, it's an approximation of what we're trying to do here. You know, you need a compass, but you also need to have an articulation of where you're orienting yourselves towards, where you're going. And a lot of the discussions have been around maps, just understanding what's going on. You know, because so many of us are just plodding along. But how do you activate what's going on inside? Jazakallah khair. How do you activate what's going on inside? How do you understand where you're going? I mean, many of us, we're going places inwardly and we don't know, we're not aware. And what these sessions, hopefully, you know, we've spoken about the nature of certitude, this state of being, of consciousness, and that there are actually degrees to this, and there's a way, and that each specific part can be broken down and understood, and each has its own unfolding map to your soul. You know. And what this should do is, you know, put that compass somewhere in the right direction. Because going through life with a broken compass isn't going to be much fun. You're going to go around lost. And then what we do as human beings, we work out a whole host of different kinds of camouflage to show everyone how well we're doing. I'm okay. And there's nothing more painful when you know deep down that you're not. But for a journey, you don't just need a map. You may need a vehicle. You may need certain tools. You may need instruments in order to try and, you know, help the ride go smoother. Maybe you get stuck because the nature of any journey, you go through obstacles. You know, there's no journey typically that's worth anything other than you kind of going through kind of obstacles. And we've touched on some of those. You know, one of them being one's own ego, one's own self. That's one of the biggest obstacles. But we also have other things. We have the dunya, the distraction and the lure of the ephemeral world, and that drags us down. You have hawa, that fuel that keeps them dragging you towards that which is not real. And you have the shaitan as well, those dark energies in existence. You know, this entity known as the shaitan, who has this very dark agenda towards you. You have to be aware and present of these things. You know, if you're going through the woods, you don't want to be, you know, eaten up by the wolf. You know. I heard in Sweden, the only real thing that people are really scared of are wolves, because it's the only aggressive kind of wild animal. Is that true? Something along these lines. So people almost like really keen on, let's just say, getting rid of them when they find them. But it's an interesting analogy. You know your enemy. Sometimes, you know, we can think it's the shaitan. The shaitan gets a lot of blame for things that actually we're doing ourselves. Imam al-Haddadi says that the ego is worse than 70 shayateen. You know, and it's your biggest enemy. Because the shaitan in his nature is created weak. But the nature of the ego can kill a person. You know, in the highest form of, you could say like fana, like a form of, well, it's not darajat, it's darakat, like stoops downwards and move away from this place of harmony and beauty and balance and light. You know, the lowest form, or like the worst dead end that a person can reach, is to take one's own life. You know, and it's interesting because it mirrors this idea of fana as where you rid yourself of your nafs and you're able to enter into this absolute consciousness and connection. It's almost the biggest form of just, there's no connection. It's, you know, this happens for different reasons, but it's just such a sad state of affairs, you know. You have this menhaj, this prophetic way. Menhaj al-Rahman, the way of al-Rahman, the compassionate. You know, and you also have the menhaj, the way of shaitan. And, you know, the two ways lead to very different ends. So we've got to be conscious that, you know, we're by virtue that we are human, part of our humanness is we're in motion. We're not stagnant. You know, we're not stagnant, we're not still. But part of this is just understanding which way we're going. Talked about the moon, talked about the stars as signs. They're signs unto something greater, but they're also signs to show that you too have signs within yourself. And this is demonstrated in the Quran. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتَنَا. We'll show them our signs. Our signs. This is Allah talking. We'll show them our signs. We'll show them. We'll disclose them to you. You know, it's like we'll cause. You know, it's very hard to kind of replicate in the English language. It's like we're actively causing you to see these signs. It's not like, you know, you might see these signs. سَنُرِيهِمْ. We will show them our signs. In the horizons, fil afaq, in the orbits of the planets and the cosmos and the, you know. This is an important form of contemplation, and we're going to have a separate session on this. You know, the prophetic, the lost sunnah of contemplation. We call it sunnah mahjura. People just forget that the Prophet ﷺ would contemplate all the time, and there's a way of doing this. You know, and often we do contemplate, but not necessarily in a prophetic way. And it takes learning of how to do this and how to condition one's mind and one's soul in a good way. But we'll show them our signs on the horizons. And this can also mean the signs. Some of the early scholars, they said, like, how quickly Islam spread. You know, how it's just everyone, you know, very early on. It's interesting. You know, they have these maps now where it shows like spread of religion. If you look at an Islam, it just really spread very, very quickly. That's one of the interpretations. But also the signs in the, you know, signs in the horizons. وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, and in themselves. The beauty of this kind of juxtaposition, not literary, but the kind of the meaning in the Quran, the way it's from this. You're thinking of the entire cosmos, because when you're reading this, you think Allah will show you the signs in the entire cosmos, and this is huge macro, you know, lens towards the entire universe and everything to think about. وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, and it goes right back down to you, know, and in yourselves. Meaning it's interesting that was preceded, you know. There's a reason why it's not said in themselves and in the horizons. It's the horizons and in themselves. Ali, karamallahu wajha, he said, تحسب أنك جرم صغيرة وفيك أنت والعالم الأكبر. You consider yourself some kind of fairly trivial organism, this kind of slightly pathetic entity within this great tapestry of, you know, other stuff, other matter. You think it's just something small. وَفِيكَ أَنْتَ وَالْعَالَمَ الْأَكْبَرُ, but within you is enveloped the broader or the grander cosmos. You know. And then the end of the verse is until it حتى يتبين, until it becomes absolutely clear that this is haqq, that this is real. You know. What's the this which is referred to here? The scholars have different interpretations. The Prophet ﷺ, what he's saying, the Quran, just this reality. You know. And this is what we're engaged with here, going through that which the Quran is challenging us to do, and that which the way of being of the Prophet ﷺ showed us how to do. So we've talked about maps, and we're going to be taking a slight shift now in the framing of these sessions, where we're going to go on a bit more onto the method. It's really important that we don't see anything that's kind of being said as like, oh, this is just philosophy. Philosophy is its own discipline, and of what's meant by, in Arabic, when you say falsafa, it just means like yatafalsaf. It's just kind of chatting on, it's kind of stabbing in the dark, and that's, you know, it's really important that we understand that all of these things, all of these maps, are maps which have been unfolded to us through the prism of the Quran and through the prism of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's anything but philosophy, it's wahi, it's revelation. And whilst it may not necessarily be the most, you know, necessarily like, oh, I just need to know what to do. Tell me what to do. Yeah, but one, we don't know where we're going. Know where we're going. We don't know what's going on inside us. These things are essential to the journey, to map out the way. Sometimes you're like, yeah, no, I'm ready, I'm all good. And you're going to trip over the first hurdle. Or you're going to be, you know, running off into the distance. It's like, bro, it's this way. And you're like, no, I'm okay. Don't worry. Trip to Allah. Bismillah. You know, it's, you know, find it, you know, with kids sometimes. Like, would you do so? And they listen to half of the sentence. They're like, yeah, yeah. And then like run off. It's like, no, this way. And they're like, yeah. Yeah, but we're like this. As we mature, you know, we may do it in a slightly more sophisticated way. We may know how to navigate social graces a bit better. But so many of us, we're doing this. I get it. I heard. That's why Abu Talib al-Makki, who wrote the book Qut al-Qulub, the nourishment of the heart, that was the inspiration for the writing of Imam al-Ghazali's Ihya Ulumuddin. He said, أصل التصوف حسن الاستماع. The essence of real Islamic spirituality is science of knowing where to go, of purifying the heart, of becoming more and more like the Prophet ﷺ, inwardly and outwardly. The essence, the root of this is to be able to listen properly, to be able to listen well. So we're going to be reflecting a bit about something called Muraqabah. Raqaba yuraqibu. Muraqabatan. Muraqabah is an interesting word. It's important to take a bit of a juncture here and understand many of these words, once again, they have a rooting in this tradition. Yeah. But now, as the Muslims have kind of slipped away, slowly but surely, from this science and from this engaging within this tradition, some of these words, they take on different, more like colloquial meanings. Like if you say muraqib to your average Arab in the Middle East or, you know, in the Arab world, they're not going to be thinking, oh, what you guys are talking about in the lesson. Muraqabah often has a very scary connotation, particularly in certain parts of the world, because it's to do with spying, or you're being checked up on. You're going to have to go report Muraqab. You've been watched over. You know. So Muraqib is somebody who's like a supervisor, or you're under surveillance. Okay? But in the prophetic understanding, as with all of these things that we've spoken about, the Prophet ﷺ defined these things and brought them back. And in the prophetic understanding, we're not talking about, once again, just purely on a linear level, like in terms of muraqabah of another person, another creation, another being, somebody in a higher place of, you know, social hierarchy, like a king, a president, a prime minister, you know, an authority. You know, what we're talking about ultimately is an awareness of this state of being with Allah. Now that completely changes the paradigm, because inherently there's fairness. One of the names of Allah is Al-Adl, you know, the ultimately just, the absolute essence of justice, you know. And Allah has conveyed to us through the Quran that He does not wrong anyone. So if we've understood something through our prism of how we filter things, like this seems like just that this is wrong, we've not fully understood the full picture. Okay. Now the Muraqabah of Allah to every single one of us is not just like waiting for you to catch you out, or waiting for you to slip up, or waiting for you to, you know, say something about our regime, or about our this, or about our, you know, it's not that. Because even if we're conscious or we're not, we always are, we always have been, and we always will be in this deep state of being watched over. And the nucleus spinning round, you know, or rather the electrons spinning around the nucleus in some distant plume of cosmic gas in the furthest reaches of the universe, Allah is as aware of that as every single one of you. Everything. Not just right now, but everything that's ever been done and everything that you will do. An absolute ultimate awareness in which there is no imperfection. That which you can imagine and that which is beyond. And ultimately that which is incomparable. Because when we ever talk about the divine attributes, we can approximate, but we can never have what's called ihata. You can't encompass. You know? One of the names of Allah is Ar-Raqib, the one who's, you could say, like monitoring or aware. But this is not like a human kind of, let me catch you out, He's aware, He's seeing. He's all seeing. He's all hearing. Not a seeing and not a hearing like we understand. Now, how do we engage with this? How do we understand what's upon us, you know, to do? And why is this important? This is one of the most important tools or instruments to develop self-awareness. And part of it is actively being aware of oneself, but this engagement in this process, of which we'll speak about, actually helps you to deepen this awareness. You actually have tools to understand what the self is. I just wanted to read a section from a text here, a classical text that was written over 300 years ago. I'm just going to summarize. I'm not claiming to translate the entire thing, but just give a summarized interpretation of each chapter. So the first line is, وَعَلَيْكَ يَا أَخِي, and you must, O my brother, and by implication my sister, وَعَلَيْكَ, you should have muraqabah of Allah. في حركاتك, in your movements, وسكناتك, in your stillness, ولحظاتك وطرفاتك وخطراتك وإراداتك وسائر حالاتك. Everything that you do, start to be aware. واستشعر قربه منك, and bring to heart his closeness. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ نَاظِرٌ إِلَيْكَ وَمُطَّلِعٌ عَلَيْكَ, and know that he's looking at you and aware of you. وَلَا يَخْفَى عَلَيْهِ مِنْكَ خَافِيًا, and nothing passes him by. Nothing. No thought, no feeling, no vibe, no inclination. Nothing in the deep depths of your subconscious and that which is deeper and that which is deeper still. Complete, absolute awareness. وَهُوَ مَعَكَ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتَ, and he's with you wherever you are. بِالْعِلْمِ, with his absolute perfect knowledge and awareness. وَالْإِحَاطَةِ, which is encompassing. And with this, he calls you to guidance and a special care which comes directly from him. والحفظ, and protection. إن كنت من الأبرار, if you're a good person. فاستحي من مولاك, so be shy. Cultivate a balanced, prophetic shyness in your heart from your Creator. حق الحياة. واجتهد أن لا يراك حيث نهاك, and work hard that he never finds you where he's told you not to be. ولا يفقدك حيث أمرك, and he doesn't not find you, where he's told you to be. Now that's not just like things that you can see. That's also to do with state of the heart. And one of the most practical and instant cures for allowing diseases in the heart to grow is to cultivate this inner awareness that you're being watched. And Allah's fair. Allah's not doing it to court you out, no. But you should also have this awareness and this sobering fear. Like we've spoke about previously, there's great misunderstandings, often born out of huge imbalances in the understanding of fear of God. But his Jalal, his majesty, is frightening. But it's also beautiful. And that's the difference. One time a teacher was asked about Jalal and Jamal, about beauty and about majesty. Because some people, they're just beautiful. And some people are just awe-inspiring. And then he was asked about the difference. Like, how do we understand this? And he said, is there any true beauty that's not awe-inspiring? And is there ever anything which is awe-inspiring that's not inherently beautiful? And this is the nature of that balance. You've got to understand it's not the fear of somebody who's unjust or looking to screw you over and doesn't get the full picture, doesn't get the reasons why you did what you did or said what you said or felt what you felt. And there's nothing hidden. Knows more than the reasons that we've cultivated for our own self. And with that, he looks over things and pardons things. But what this state does is it cultivates a shyness of an approach to someone that you love. If somebody does something, maybe in some kind of relationship, and they know that it would displease the other person, you're going to have a shyness and a fear that maybe they find out. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. Allah is obviously It's incomparable to any worldly kind of relationship, but we can take an understanding from this. You don't want to displease. You know. One time there was a disciple, and he came to his teacher, a student, he came to his teacher. And he said, you know, I want to do something and I know Allah's not going to be pleased with it. Do you give me permission? And he says, the teacher's wise, and it's the nature of real teachers. They're not like, no, you know. I mean, sometimes that's what's required, but sometimes that just is like, okay, yeah, well, I knew you'd say that anyway, I'm going to do it. It doesn't resonate. It's the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he says, you can do it, but just go when nobody can see you. And eat from something that's not been given to you. And he goes through this whole list. And through like Inaya, he gets the point. He goes like, everywhere I go, I'm being watched. You know. And everything I eat from, I'm also, ultimately it's been given to me. I see this. You know, I've been provided for. He said, you're gonna do something to displease the one that's giving you all this? And the man kind of got the point and came back. Like one time, famous hadith, a Sahabi in the majlis, in the gathering of the Prophet ﷺ, spoke a little bit about the nature of the adab, the etiquette within those gatherings. That the Sahaba were incredibly quiet and still and attentive. And he, you know, kind of puts his hand up and asks, O Messenger of Allah, can I fornicate? Forgive this, can I sleep around? That's how you'd say it. Imagine you go to a mosque, yeah? And there's a quiet gathering and the teacher's there. It's like, Sheikh, you know, what do you think? What would be the reaction? You know, because it says so much about the Prophet ﷺ as well. Like you could never catch him off guard. And that's the nature of the people of Muraqabah. You don't catch them off guard because they're always totally on guard. And I don't mean they don't have this tenderness born out of like, I'm never going to let you in. But they're like, they say the person of this path, you know, one of the signs of refinement is were their inner states to be put on a plate and put in the marketplace, then they wouldn't be shy of what was shown. Like your inner workings, and like, but so many of us, oh man, I've got to camouflage this. Nobody could never know about this, but they've worked on themselves. But look at the Prophet's reaction, because he always knew it. It's like, I'm here to teach. I'm here to show you a better way. Most people, you know, they're going to be like, brother, that's haram. Jazakallah khair. Thanks for the affirmation. Why would somebody be asking if he, you know, why was he asking? You know? Is there any kind of dispensation, any leeway here? What was the first thing the Prophet ﷺ did? Who knows? Like how many people are going to get booted out of the masjid? Or at the very least, they're going to be like, astaghfirullah. They're not going to, even if they're not physically kicked out, you're not going to feel like welcome. I don't know. Maybe some places are different. But the Prophet's way, the first thing he said, come sit close to me. Come here. Just that would have been enough of a cure. Come close. Adnu ilayya. Come sit by me. Like what took place in those moments of him being told by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, like, come close into my presence. Come, subhanAllah. He's got like an amr, idhan from the Prophet, like, come close to me. I don't think there wasn't stuff going on inwardly with that man. It wasn't just like, just take a seat here for a minute and I can talk to you. He's a bit distant. The microphone isn't working that well. Not like that. Adnu ilayya, come close to me. Because when he said something, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it was always embedded by, it worked on every level of reality. Come close to me. You're close to the Prophet, so what are you going to worry about? Just come close to me. He's already saved him. You know, he's already helped him. He's already purified him. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Come close to me. Adnu ilayya. And then he doesn't insult the guy's intellect. It's not like, it's kind of haram, shouldn't be doing. He said, how do you feel if someone said this about your sister? Someone asks the same thing now about your own sister or about your mum. Then the nafs is like, wait a minute. Few things. Everything I do, every action I take has some kind of consequence. And that has a reality in our tradition. We have to be aware that we're part of a broader network of being. It's not just like do what I want, fulfill myself. No, it has an effect, which ultimately will have an effect on you. Allah doesn't wrong anyone. وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. Rather, they just are wronging their own selves. And that's the thing. Sometimes we think, I'll just take other people's rights. No. But you're the one. That's the saddest, that's the tragedy of it all. Like, you're the one that's ultimately harming your own self. And the man was like, what? No. How would any man react? And he said, every lady is, someone's daughter, or maybe someone's sister, or maybe don't think it's one rule for you and another rule from everyone else. Like respect, the sanctity of a lady. Who do you think you are? Just like, having your nafs, run wild with no consequences. Like, and then, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he placed his hand on his heart. Because there was still, the things with logic, we can be told, yeah, I know it's not the best thing for me to do, but just one look. I know it's not the best thing to do, but it's hard to get halal food here, just one burger. I know it's hard to do, but nobody ever will know. That's the point, that's taqwa. That's where taqwa kicks in, or it should do. When no one else is looking. And those are the moments that you can ascend. Those are the moments, Allah's contoured that moment. Okay, it's just me and you right now. Where are you at? That's taqwa. That's consciousness, that's awareness. Nobody will know. I mean, like, it's asr prayer, it's, salatul wusta, Allah mentioned in the Quran, because it's difficult to do, and it's, everyone kind of, it's hard here. Okay. Talk about that kind of awareness. So he places, there can be this remnant. I get the whole intellectually, I know it's not good for me, I know it's not, spiritually or maybe even physically, I know it's not, but, and there were that baqaya, those remnants of the residual, the ghosts of, of one's mind just like playing around in the nafs, Okay, I get it, yeah, it wouldn't be nice, but, when that hawa kicks in, boom. So he placed his hand on his heart, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the man said, from the moment that he took his hand away, that this thing that I asked to do was the most, I didn't hate anything more. There was nothing more detested to me. There's nothing, it's just not right, it's not nice, it's not, from what? From the hand. But whose hand, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? So we're talking about Muraqabah. You can have Muraqabah, the how-to. How to do Muraqabah. There are also practical steps to Muraqabah. One of them is to write a journal. Often people have diaries. Now, I don't know if people still have this. Maybe there is some kind of subculture thing going on, like to write a diary. Kind of move away from screens, and I like to keep a diary. A lot of people to do this. There are many examples of people that have a kind of worldly success that often kept to kind of a journal. And what we're talking about here is a journal of, you know, introspection. You actually write these things down because it helps you to cultivate that inner climate. You're creating now a kind of habitat. Like you've got this place here in Gothenburg, it's got like, you know, tropical animals and all this kind of thing. Like, why? Because they have to constantly test, is this correct? Yeah? They have to test the nature of the climate. Is it too hot, too cold? Like most of those things are going to die. You know, if you're in like Northern Europe and you're just letting some like tropical animal or bird or whatever, it's not going to be able to exist. But inwardly, you have to also be aware of how you're cultivating that inner climate, that habitat, that place of being, in order to allow things to thrive and flourish. Those ahwal that we spoke about, states of being, those maqamat, those states of certainty, that place of clarity, there has to be constant attention paid to this. And this is muraqabah, to be attentive, to be aware, this constant state of introspection, and there are degrees. Really what this is how to learn to self-diagnose and how to constantly improve, because to know that it's not just a one-off thing. And people are on different degrees in their approach to this, this tool, this thing which we've been given, this prophetic way of method of how to be in a state of introspection. Some people, they have Muraqabah in that which they do, that which they say. Some people, they have a state of Muraqabah, of attentiveness to even their states of being. Like, I know I smiled at the person, that was nice, but like, what was the state of my heart when I did that? Was it nabawi? Was it conducive to the Prophet's way of being? Was it in a state of consciousness? Did I have ulterior motives? Did I have a different agenda? And some people, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And some of the great awliya, they have what's called Muraqabah as-sir, which is they're completely aware of those degrees of consciousness, and ultimately what we talked about, mushahada, and ta'budullah ka'annaka tara, to worship Allah, devote yourself to God as if you see Him. If they slip away from that, they see that as a move away from consciousness. No, that's something that we need to aspire towards. Allah gives to whoever He wills. It's all from Allah. It's nothing that we do. And it's also a place of humility to know, don't think just because we took out the journal and write 3 or 4 points down that we really must be one of the awliya now. But to engage in the path is a gift. So Muraqabah. Now, each of these things, Muraqabah, you can go into in great depths, but what we're going to touch on now is retrospection, which is Muhasabah. Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, "Hasabu qabla an tuhasabu." Take yourself into account, be in this state of constant awareness and assessment and reviewing and self-improvement before you're taken into account, before that ultimate assessment, meaning when you die, because the place of where you're given that agency to interact and improve, like it's not on Yawm al-Qiyamah, when you can't say, I should have done that better, another chance. Allah talks to these people in the Quran. Can we go back and have another try? No. That's not the way it works. And what Umar was saying there is, like, you've got to be conscious that everything that you do, everything you say, everything you feel, every agenda, every intention has eternal consequences. You're not just temporal beings in that sense. Your intentions count. And there are different degrees of this also. You have what's called the Ahl Ahwal, the people of states. Now a state, as we said, was temporal, meaning it can be locked within time. Yeah? So you can take yourself into account for a particular state. You know, I had envy there for a moment, or I was angry there for a moment. And it was a state, but it was transient. Yeah? Or, you know, and people are in different degrees of this. And then you have what's called al-anfas. Anfas is people almost like the receiver's always there. It's difficult to describe this, we haven't got the time to go into what it basically means. It means breaths, but we're talking about spiritual breezes, and what we're talking about now is so difficult to render into English. People that they're constantly receiving, you know, because their hearts are like vessels, they've done the work, and their work is just being, you know, connected. And that's not temporal anymore, because you're connected to something which is, you know, not confined by time or space. So if you slip out of that state, write it down in your journal. Take yourself into account. So this is one of the most important tools for self-refinement. A lot of books on like self-help genre, this is kind of almost all they talk about typically. And this is one component in our tradition of self-refinement. You know, they'll talk about things like, if you did something today and you could improve upon it, then write it down and look at the way in which you can improve upon it. But it takes a process of self-awareness. And to understand that this is a component, you know. Like you have a steering wheel in a car. It's great, but you also need a gear stick, even if it's automatic. You need brakes. There are different components to it. But each of them you have to have this constant awareness to. And a person on a spiritual path, they have this attention to these different things. They never neglect the map. They never lose sight of like what this should be doing. Like if you're on the road, there are many things which you're doing. You're aware of the signs. What does the sat-nav say? You're even subliminally turning the wheel. You're looking at what gear you should be in. You're being aware of cars cutting. There has to be this kind of, you know, awareness, and this deepens. Yeah. So in terms of practical advice, these two things are linked. And it's part of, you could say, a practical thing which we can do to take, when we take time out, it's a part of detoxing, it's a part of developing that objectivity within ourselves, meaning that we're now examining ourselves, we're being objective, as opposed to just being this rolling monster of a nafs that's unaware of himself, just going around and just annoying people and, you know, humiliating oneself. Like it's like, okay, let me take myself out of this for a minute. And they say many of the people of this science, they would actually speak to their own nafs as if it was someone else. Maybe many of these people would be seen as like, you know, they had some kind of psychological illness. You know, but they weren't. There was no schism. They were actually recognizing a part within them. Like, nafs, you better watch out. You better do this. And you get people doing this in sports. Come on, you can do this. Like, and there's no one else in the changing room, and he's like giving himself like a pep talk. I had to do it in an American accent, because English people, they just don't really do sports. You just watch the football. Well, I don't even do that. What's that? Yeah. No, there are people that do it, but you get my point. It's always more effective in an American accent for those kind of things. And the people that were involved in this training of the nafs and the soul, they did this. They spoke to themselves. Come on, you can do better than this. And Imam al-Haddad talks about this as well. Like if you find your nafs veering towards doing something which you know is not good, you know it's not going to help you, you know it's unhealthy, and you know it's going to have consequences. The first thing he does is he says, scare it. Okay, you want to do this? You're fasting tomorrow. See how you like that? And it's like, no, let's shut the door. But once again, it's about a balance. So if you try that and then after like, I don't care anyway, I live for the moment. And say like, then you've got to, you know, it's like the carrot and the stick. You've got to give it a bit of, okay, you don't know what Allah's promised you. Look what Allah's given you. Just reflect upon that. It's one of the channels of reflection, just to think about all of the blessings in one's life, all of the good things. And who is it from? Every blessing that you have is from Allah. وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ مِن نِعَمٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. Every blessing that you have is from Allah. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. And were you to try and count, enumerate all the blessings of Allah, you'd not be able to do so. So, take a journal. Sweden has some really nice stationery shops. You gotta think, oh, I'll get a nice journal. Maybe it'd make it easier. Nice pen. You know, if you just do it with a biro on the back of a bit of an old newspaper, it's easy to throw away. Now, it's that naff thing anyway. If you make it, because you know, if somebody writes poetry or they write notes, you want to be a nice moleskin, you know, and it's like spend some money. You know, because this is like saving you. You know, make sure nobody else has a sneaky peek. He's like, that's what they've been thinking this whole time, you know. But go through those things and start with like that which you said and that which you did in that day, 24-hour plan. Was there anything that came to mind? You know what? That was not right. That was, and the balance is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Messenger of Allah, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, what that also implies is, as you know, the more we learn about him, the finer the filtration process goes. It doesn't just end. You know, it should be getting deeper, and that's part of that approach to Allah. You know, moving towards Allah. Allah will open things up for you deeper and deeper. You know, the one من تقرب إلي شبرا تقربت إليه ذراعا. The one that has this approach to me, that movement towards me. At hand's length, I come to him an arm's length. That's not like a unit. Well, we actually do centimeters and we're on the metric thing here in Sweden. It's figurative. You know, because Allah is closer to you than you right now. He just makes you more aware if you make the active movement. And Muraqabah, introspection, and Muhasabah, that self-accounting, self-refinement, is one of the greatest processes and tools and instruments to start really moving upon this path. So this is, inshallah, what we can start to do. The next session, inshallah, we'll be going a bit more into this. And then we'll be going through the different parts of the nafs, because we need to know sometimes, well, I didn't really have anything to reflect over. You know, so we're going to be moving into those things. What does anger mean? What are the triggers for anger? And how can we work on those things? What are the triggers for envy? How can I eliminate those things? That's what it means, purification of the heart. Taking it from the root, not just like, you know, sometimes you go through a field that's full of weeds and just mow the lawn. It's like, it looks wonderful, but all the roots are like spreading, because all the spawns are kind of going everywhere. And we don't want to do that. The prophetic method is to take it right from the root. So may Allah give us tawfiq. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. If anyone has any questions, if anyone needs to go, feel free. If anyone has any questions or comments, whatever, please feel free to ask.
I have a question.
Sure.
The thing that you explained here, the practical advice is that one can threaten with like fasting and all those stuff. But if you finding yourself want to do something, and then you realize that no, this is wrong, and you do it because maybe you want to upset the prophets or send them, or just because it's wrong. Is that when you ascend? You start to ascending in those.
Okay.
In the spiritual journey, you understand what I mean?
Yeah. Initially, yes. Recognition of just apprehending. Wait a minute. That's a thought that didn't necessarily come from a good place. How do I deal with it? You know, what's its root? How do I uproot it? And stopping oneself before it translates into the world of action, by which we also mean like speech or even like a look or something like this, is a sign of progress on the spiritual path. The sign of ihsan. However, it's degrees, and sometimes just the presence of that. One of them once went past a person, and they were begging. They went like this, and he said, "I had this subtle khatir, just this fluttering of like, come on, man, why didn't you just go and get a job?" And he said he wasn't able to get up in the night for tahajjud for 40 days. And he attributed it to that. Now, there are two things there. One of them is that, like, most of us maybe wouldn't even recognize it. We've got all these thoughts going on. We're not even aware. But their kind of inner climate is so clear, and their lens is so obvious that, wait a minute, that shouldn't be there. This shouldn't be there. It's really obvious to them. And the second thing, they understand like tahajjud is a gift from Allah, and it's something that Allah gives. Like, you can't wake up in the night if you're not woken up ultimately. You can set all the alarms in the world. You can read all of the hadith that you want. But if there's no tawfiq, if you're not woken up, it's revealed to Dawood that he's lied to me, the one that confesses love of me, and he doesn't come to me in the night. And that's the time when the people of Allah, they're alone, and there's no one else there. We're going to be having a separate session soon all about Qiyam al-Layl. But the point being is that's what he saw, One time, another of them, they came back to him and they said, like, he said, there was this fire, like, where you live, all the houses were burnt down except yours. And you know what he did? He went, Alhamdulillah. He says, for a year after I called myself into account, I did Muhasabah of my own self. Alhamdulillah. Like, I'm praising Allah, and there are other people that have suffered. There are other people that are suffering here, and the houses are burnt down, and I'm like, oh, at least I'm okay. But just to recognize that is an amazing thing. Here's the thing. What do you think that kind of human being is going to do to the community and the society around them? If somebody that's so aware of their own shortcomings and aware, evils, and they're constantly attentive to like helping and serving and fulfilling other people's rights in the most beautiful of ways. That's what the Prophet ﷺ cultivated in Medina. The Sahaba were all about that. Because Sayyidina Abu Darda, and this was early on in Islam, there was a confrontation between him and Sayyidina Bilal, and he made a racist comment to him. And the Prophet ﷺ did not accept it. He said, I can still smell the whiff of jahiliyyah in you. Like, this is not what I'm calling to. But immediately he had that state of muhasabah. Stuff, I come to my senses. That was a ghost from the past. That's not what we've been taught now in these gatherings and frequenting the gatherings of the Prophet ﷺ. And he went straight to Bilal. He said, I beg you, please forgive me. And he says, of course, like, you're forgiven. Like, I know, like, you didn't mean it. I know this is. He said, no, like I want you to humiliate me, to show me, like. And he said, I don't want to do this. No. And they were so hard against their own selves. They recognize it. And that's another thing as well. Like, there are many people, they have a lot of issues. There are many ghosts from the past. Maybe there are elements of, like, racism within them. Or just, like, all these kind of diseases. But what Islam does is just like, we're going to work with that. We're not saying, what, you became Muslim and you're not perfect. No. It's like saying, but just engage in the path. Engage in this process. Engage in what this means. Like Sayyidina Umar, he's walking in the mosque and he was a tough guy. You know, and there were these two kids playing in the mosque. And Umar's like 8 foot, he's huge. He's this warrior Arab. And these two kids are playing in the mosque of the Prophet, he said, and he's just doing it out of, this is a sacred place. This is, you don't know the sanctity, but also like he's got that, you know, he's got that temperament. And he doesn't have to say anything. And the kids look at Umar, he's like, what are you doing, kids? You know what I mean? I mean, it's the scariest uncle in the masjid ever. You know, because you know, and they're like, ugh. And then from behind him, from one of the Sariya, like one of the pillars in the mosque, all he heard was, Ya Umar. It was the Prophet ﷺ. He didn't say, Umar, come on, how many years you've been with it? This is not the way we do things, chill, come on. Ya Umar. And Umar got it straight away. He didn't even have to turn around. His heart was so affected, he just literally, physically crumbled, started to cry. He says, Ya Rasulullah. He turns around. He's so humbled, like he catches himself, you know, and that's what the Prophet ﷺ, like, you're the one that's been helping with myself. That's why the people that do this, like, they're like the fathers, your father. They're like your father. They see your teacher as like your father because they teach you what it means to be a man, or to be a woman, to be a real human being. From the depths of your soul, how can you ever repay someone? Like, and that's why people are like, I don't get this whole love thing. How could you not? Are you dead? How could you not love someone that's like, you're giving me like back what it means to be human. You're giving me back my, like, you're bringing me back together. And I like the feeling, you know. Yeah. And the Sahaba totally got that. Totally understood that. Radiyallahu anhum. Wallahu a'lam.